All right, we're going to cover some strange things and some things in sports around the turn of the century this time. Two major motorcycle companies came out around this time. One of them is still around. So we have the Indian Motorcycle Company, which is always red, and we have Harley Davidson. It's basically a bicycle with a motor strap to it. If you looked at them. One guy decided it would be a great idea to make a one-wheeled motorcycle. That's what this is. Okay. You could still buy one today, but they're about $100,000 each. They're custom built, that kind of stuff. So anyway, in boxing, let's move on to boxing. And let's talk about this guy. Okay, this is John L. Sullivan, and he was the first great heavyweight champion of boxing. Okay, back then boxing was very different. Okay, first of all, there were no round limits. Okay, so you could box as many rounds until somebody quit or somebody died or someone got knocked out. The other thing is no gloves. No gloves, no round limits. Okay, so it was a brutal sport and people died all the time. Now, John L. Sullivan was so good at boxing that he was actually undefeated for about 10 years until a guy named Gentleman Joe, who is it? Yeah, Jim, not Joe. Gentleman Jim Corbett knocked him out in the 21st round, okay? Now, before that, he was so confident in his abilities that he offered $10,000 to anybody who could stay in the ring with him for 5 rounds. You didn't even have to beat him to collect the money. You just had to actually last 5 rounds. And Jim Corbett is the one who actually collected that money. John L. Sullivan, he goes out west during the Wild West era. After his boxing career, he's kind of getting out of shape by that point.
Amelia Daly, report to the front office.
He's kind of getting out of shape by that point, and he runs into a guy that used to work for a sideshow, okay? Basically a freak show, something like that. And this guy was born without the ability to feel pain completely. So he would wander around these western towns and he would offer cowboys a deal. He would say, look, you can hit me for $1, or for $2 you can use this bat. Okay, so you go up to a drunk cowboy and offer him to hit you for $1, you know. That's what he did for a living. Well, he went into a saloon one day, this guy, and he ran across a stranger that he had never seen before, and he offers him the deal. So the stranger gives him $2, and then he hits him twice in the stomach. And the guy had internal bleeding and he died, okay, very shortly after that. That stranger was John L. Sullivan. He hit this guy so hard he busted his guts in 2 shots. So anyway, that's boxing for you. We've got a little bit more about boxing. It's very popular at the turn of the century. Even the U.S. Navy had their own boxing clubs. You can see that right here. This was a historic bout. I don't know the boxers' names, but this is what it looks like whenever you have over 100 rounds of boxing. These guys literally fought for 8 hours, if you add up the time. So that is a horrible scene. There's a lot of blood there, okay? All right, baseball. Let's talk about baseball. Baseball becomes America's pastime around the 1920s, even though it actually started around the Civil War. It was called town ball back then. Under town ball, there were no limit to the amount of people in the outfield. So you would have one batter and maybe 50 guys out in the outfield. Okay, so eventually that morphed until we have our first World Series in 1903. It's the Boston Pilgrims versus the Pittsburgh Pirates. All right, so these are, again, y'all, the focus of this is I'm telling you what sports were popular at the turn of the century, what odd things were there, okay? So another thing that becomes very popular, after the invention of the safety bicycle in 1885, bicycling becomes the most popular thing that Americans do. I mean, everybody's bicycling everywhere they go. Nobody can afford a car yet. If there are cars, they're like $10,000. It's basically rich playthings for the rich, you know, stuff like that. So everybody gets into bicycling, and, you know, if you get a bicycle and someone else in your neighborhood gets a bicycle for Christmas, let's say, and you're like 6 years old and you just learned how to ride it, I mean, how long is it going to be before you say, hey, let's have a race, you know? So, I mean, as soon as bicycling was invented, racing came right after that. So what they did is they actually built their own custom-made wooden tracks. It's kind of like built like the gym floor in the high school gym, but it's actually at an angle, so that way the centrifugal force won't throw you off the track whenever you're taking a turn. But these were outside tracks for the most part, and they were pretty dangerous. Like, none of these guys have helmets on, okay? During racing, there's no pads. Also, because it's outside, the wood would also rot a lot of times, and the boards would pop up, and nails would pop up out of it, and if you took a slide, you might be sliding over some exposed nail heads and, you know, bringing a few of your buddies with you. But those tracks are called the velodrome. Okay, so bicycle racing at the velodrome was very popular. This guy's face is always funny to me. I don't know why, but he looks so pleased with himself in this picture. Anyway, moving on. So football, okay? So football began as a college hazing game for freshmen. So hazing means whenever you initiate somebody, like gangs. They will, if you want to join a gang, you have to go and get a beat in, which means a bunch of gang members will beat you up for 5 minutes or something. There's other ways in gangs too, but those aren't appropriate for our videos. So let's just say that females have a different option. Anyway, moving on. So this was a college freshman game, and it eventually becomes a college sport. And this is actually the first football helmet ever being tested. So it's made out of all leather, and the inventor paid some poor guy to put it on and run right up against his house and probably break his spine. And they're laughing in the background, by the way. I would be too. So anyway, goofy stuff, y'all. All right. So this is the inventor of basketball, James Naismith. Okay. So he is a PE teacher at the YMCA, which is the Young Men's Christian Association, and he has his own gym. He has students that come in, and most days they're outside playing, but occasionally on rainy days there's not much to do. Okay, so he takes a peach basket right here, cuts the hole out of it, the bottom out of it, and then he suspends it on a pole, and the sport of basketball is born. Okay, they used a volleyball, okay, or soccer ball, excuse me. Back then, soccer balls were brown; they were leather. Okay, and eventually they're gonna paint the ball orange, not for the players, but it's so that way the spectators in the crowd could actually see the ball and follow it more clearly. It's a lot easier to see a bright orange ball than a dark brown one. Okay, they also added the backboard eventually. Okay, so that was a big innovation that helped score a lot more points. All right, that's it for basketball.